One thing that people traumatized as children are really vulnerable to is addiction, whether it's to alcohol and drugs, or smoking, or spending, or food. But there's another kind of addiction, and it has to do with high drama, high misery relationships that consume your life, just the same as if you were doing drugs, and you found you couldn't stop. So just like with drugs, the addiction can start off small and innocent enough, but soon you find that your life is filled with addictive behavior. You're isolated. Your decisions are no longer driven by what's in your best interest, but instead, you're driven more and more by addictive hunger, by a longing to escape the pressure and the loneliness and the triggery intensity of day-to-day life, especially when people are part of your life, which they always are. They're triggering, right? If only they could make you feel loved without making life so hard. So life feels empty, and yet being close to people, for so many of us with childhood PTSD, has only brought pain. And that's where all addictions find an opening, and especially relationship addictions. It's comforting in a way, right? You can grab at a relationship. Like all addictions, relationship addictions can feel innocent enough at first, but there are telltale signs an addiction is sucking the life out of you anyway. So my letter today is from a woman I'll call Sienna, and she writes, "Hi Anna, I've been watching your channel for over a year now. I can't believe the amount of healing that has happened in that time. I remember watching your video, If I Had 1 Year to Heal, and thinking there was no way I could do most of that. It was a video where I listed 10 things I would do if I magically only had 1 year to heal. So it was really like a condensation of the most powerful changes that I made over many years." And Sienna says, "I didn't think there was any way I could do that, yet somehow I've managed to leave my alcoholic husband, lose 100 pounds, quit smoking, and get out of debt." Woo! I'm circling some things I want to come back to. And I'll read all the way through, Sienna, and just hear the story, and then I'll come back and talk about some things I circled. See if I can help. All right. "I feel like I've come so far, and yet there is so much left to work on. I'm moody, triggered by people. My communication skills are terrible. I'm extremely isolated, estranged from my entire family, and have only one friend. And that friend is the reason I'm writing to you, because I don't know what you'll make of it, but I imagine it won't be very good. In a week, I'm moving to a different state to be closer to this person who is both a friend and a sexual partner. I'm 40 and he is 24. He has supported and encouraged me so much to make all these positive changes in my life. As if that weren't enough, there's an element of dominance in our relationship. He is dominant and I'm submissive. That might sound really wild, but in practice, it's actually pretty wholesome and nice. There's a lot of communication involved, and he's helping me get better at that. Anna, I know this is kind of wrong, but is it really wrong if it makes my life better? I am very careful to take responsibility for all my decisions, even if he influences them. I have nothing keeping me in the city where I live now. I don't like it here, and it's too expensive. The city where I'm moving is about 30 minutes from my friend, and I think it will be a great place to live. Since the pandemic, I've been working from home, but even before that, it was a few years since I had a friend to spend time with on a regular basis. I feel very optimistic, and yet I imagine you will think I'm making a big mistake. I imagine if I had other people in my life, they would think the same thing. I would like to think that there's a chance for me to turn this weird situation into the best decision I've ever made for myself. Or am I just fooling myself? I love listening to your tough love, and hopefully you have some insight for me. Thanks, Sienna." Okay, very interesting letter. Thank you for sending that. I think I can help. So, you were married to an alcoholic, and I know how miserable that can be, and you don't even go into detail, but say no more. It would have been very unfulfilling, full of problems, anger, money, I don't know. And the addictions that you've let go in the past year of, out of the marriage, lost 100 pounds, that is so much. Quit smoking, which I happen to know how hard that is, and get out of debt. I also happen to know how hard that is. Those are 4 things at the same time that are incredibly positive. And what they tell me is that you were in a bad state before, that you even had 4 things that needed that amount of change, you know, that you were in a very difficult state before where your emotions, I would imagine, were drowning you all the time and you were escaping like heck. All right. So you've come so far, so much to work on. And I thought this was also significant. You let go of those actions or consciously change them. I don't know if let go is always the word for what we do. Sometimes it's like by muscle, right? I'm moody, triggered by people, terrible communication skills, extremely isolated, estranged from my entire family, and have only one friend. And that friend is the reason I'm writing to you. Okay. So one friend, and the friend is sort of a quasi-friend and sexual partner, but you don't say like a partner, not a boyfriend, not strictly a friend. Okay, so it's a sort of ambiguous friendship. But I hear it's a catalyst person for you. It's a person who motivated you to make massive changes. All right, this is what I'm hearing. The negative personality stuff that's left, even though you were able to change the smoking, the bad marriage, the debt, the weight, even though all of that, the terrible feeling about yourself, you sound like, well, if it were alcoholism, which it's not, that wasn't your thing, but if it were, that's what alcoholics call a dry drunk. It's somebody who stops drinking, but they haven't really dealt with the recovery part of it, the emotional recovery that's underneath all of it, having a positive and constructive way to cope when feelings get intense. And if you have CPTSD, and I assume you do, you know, those feelings can be very intense. There needs to be a way to process them. So, you know, there's literally a 12-step program for all 4 of these issues that you did. There's actually more than one program for some of them. And you didn't say whether that's how you did it. You did it because somebody came along and inspired you. That's what I got from your letter anyway, that he was encouraging and supporting you to make these positive changes. So that's a catalyst person, sort of like a muse. And I'm not knocking that. Those people can be really, really a gift when they come into your life. You know, you're asking me, you know that I'm going to have something to say about this, right? And that you say, if I had friends, I think they would judge it too. So I think part of you knows that there's something in you that's galloping off to the next thing. And I would just say, it sounds like it's the next addiction. If you don't have that emotional healing that starts making that deep change in your personality, the addictions, you're going to be vulnerable. I'm not going to condemn you and say, oh, they're coming back for sure. I don't know. But once we have that tendency in us, we will tend to keep finding something. A lot of people joke about it being like that game whack-a-mole. You know, you knock that one down and this one comes up. And so this has hallmarks of that, and especially the way you're trying to protect what you're doing, even as you ask for help, which I just think it's awesome. You're not going to get stuck because you do ask for help. This is so courageous to reach out on here and to allow people to, you know what's going to happen. Everybody will comment, and some people will go, you go, Anna's so judgmental, and other people will go, you're terrible, you should never do that. You know, so you and I will get judged and we'll do that, but you're going to find what's really true for you and what's really sustainable for you. So I don't know, maybe you did need to leave town. It sounds like you're creating a fresh start in so many aspects of your life. So the language that you're using here, that you're taking responsibility for all your decisions, even if he influences them, that sounds really good. Why do I not quite believe it? When you were saying how nice it would be to have a friend to see on a regular basis, I think the dynamics of this friendship are such that it's not stable. It might be very fun today, but especially if it's no longer long distance, that will put a pressure on it that could very well not stand the test of time. It could be over in a week, right? I mean, by the time I've read this, it could be over. So for you being in a new city, it can't include counting on that this is going to turn into a friend you see on a regular basis. It's not really it is a friendship. Friendship is the appropriate word for something where there's no commitment. It's friends with benefits, right? The dominant thing, so it sounds like you're having a sexual adventure is what it is. If you were married to an alcoholic all this time, that might be something that you have in your system. It wants to come out of your system. You want to find out what that's like, so you're finding out now. If you have CPTSD, I'm just going to tell you based on my experience, if it's not supported by an actual commitment, person who loves you, person who's with you, person who's exclusive with you, it could be very, very wobbly for you emotionally. Now, you don't say, right now, I'll just grant to you, if you're somebody and your temperament is, I really don't want a commitment, I really don't want a boyfriend, I will be totally fine if this guy sees many other people and we hang out socially sometimes and he has a girlfriend with him. If you're fine with that, then this probably won't be a problem. But I ask you, if you think you're going to be fine with it, are you just being the cool girl? And cool girl is what we call here, there's a male version of it too, we call it the nice guy. It's a person who subverts what they really want, how they really feel, and they try to conform to the wants and needs of somebody who is only wanting them for sex or for some other purpose that isn't loving, full 100% love. And so for the nice guy, sometimes a woman wants the guy around for security or sex or to, just take care of things or keep her from being alone. It's not woman and man specific, but it sometimes is woman specific, and I think yours might be. So I hear people a lot, like they want to talk in this detached, kind of joking, lighthearted way about sexual adventures. So this thing about like, oh yeah, he's dominant and you're submissive. Okay, I realize a lot of people are into that, but is the adventure going to be enough for you, or do you actually want a relationship? Because I'm not hearing that's what you have. Then you say, I know it's kind of wrong, so I have to just go by hints that you know something's wrong. You're telling me it's wrong. I do get letters from people sometimes and they're like, oh yeah, I just, I have a wild sex life. What is the problem? I'm totally happy. Everyone in my life is totally happy. I hear about that. I actually, there's always the people who are polyamorous who come on here and they always have this very rational kind of down to earth, it sounds like somebody at the school library teaching sex education or something. It always has that hallmark. Communication is good. For me, just having been around so much of that, whenever people are trying to emphasize that they communicate a lot about something that's actually like inherently emotionally devastating for a person like me, infidelity, but it's a lot of communication. For me, it's a red flag. I'll just be honest with you. But I leave it to you to decide, is this really authentically feel empowered and good and safe for you? And I would just say, it would be wise to assume it's going to end fairly soon. It won't last. If it lasts, great, but just assume it's not. By the time I got this letter and answered it, you've already made the move, so you're in the new city, so now you get a new start. This is what I would encourage you, Sienna, is get into 12-step recovery. That is what people do to heal addiction, addictive patterns. And I just see the patterns so deep in you. It's very interesting, if you have an alcoholic husband, everybody goes, oh my gosh, the alcoholic. And then they're like, oh, you must just be codependent. And people have that lighthearted attitude towards codependent. I didn't hear codependence towards your husband here. You didn't really describe it. You're over it, I think. But I heard the food addiction, the spending addiction, the cigarette addiction. Those are big, those are very big. And just stopping them all at the same time is a huge vulnerability. How now are you going to escape? How now are you going to get your inspiration? How are you going to calm the intense emotions that come when something hurts? That's why people get into recovery. And that's what sobriety means. When for alcoholics, they talk about being dry or abstaining from alcohol versus sobriety. And sobriety implies the full Megillah of physical sobriety, but also emotional sobriety. So for you, I hear substance things, food, cigarettes, those are substances. Spending is more like a dopamine thing through behaviors. So is, honestly, being in a terrible relationship can have its own addiction to the terrible hormones, the terrible highs, and also the way it grants you a big curtain, a big veil of invisibility. It's like, look at my partner, what a screw up they are, don't look at me. So now you're exposed. And the friends that you're not having, who would have a problem with you, I think that's something, it's something to take seriously. You're personifying in straw men and women these friends who you think would have a problem with what you're doing. That's really you thinking that. I want you to have friends. Friends are important. And for people who were traumatized as kids, it's not always easy to develop. So you need kind of a safe container where it's understood that some of us are a little, we're dented from our experiences. We're figuring things out right now. That's what I love about 12-step recovery. I hope you check it out. It is a good way to start developing social skills. We were having a group coaching call this morning for the people in my membership program, and we were just talking about socialization and growing up feral. Meaning, maybe we had food or maybe we had a roof over our head, but a lot of us, we didn't know how to navigate. How do you know when you've offended somebody? How do you thank the people properly after they've done something kind for you? How do you apologize? How do you confront somebody when they've stepped on your toes? I don't know. My parents would drink or rage, or I don't know. I had to figure that out for myself, and the fear of conflict and losing everybody was pretty strong. So it's helped me, and I think it would help you to gain some confidence in the basics of human interaction by having friends in a structured environment like a 12-step program, where you don't have to make authentic friends with people, but you won't, you kind of can't help it. Everybody's talking about what's really going on. That is what friendship involves. So if you go to a 12-step program, being that you're really into a man romantically right now, and I would, I'm kind of hearing between the lines, it feels like you're in love with him. That's not a shameful thing. That's a natural thing. It's natural to be in love with the person you're having sex with. It doesn't always happen, but that's what's happening. The cart's ahead of the horse here, and it may not be a viable relationship for you. Love, though, luckily, you can have love whether relationships work out or not. You can have it with friends. So if you go to a 12-step program, I recommend you get a sponsor, a woman, socialize with the women, stay clear of the men. That's, that keeps some boundaries around that, because when vulnerable people are all in the room, things happen, right? And that can complicate your path to recovery. It can complicate it if you have, if you're kind of entangled in a relationship with somebody in the meeting that you need very much for your connection and your healing. Get a sponsor. Find the woman in the room who has the strongest recovery, who you kind of like what's going on. You don't have to have somebody whose life circumstances match yours or is identical to what you want in life. I'd say the most important thing is that they demonstrate an ability to solve their own problems as they arise. That is what recovery is, and that they're able to meet hardships in their life with some stability and humor and can-do attitude. That is emotional sobriety. So if anybody watching is interested in learning more, like what is emotional sobriety, I have a video about it right here, and I will see you very soon.